Well, well, hello, hello, hello. I think that we are live on Facebook. At least that's what it says that we are. So we will see if we are there. But I'm going to record this anyway, just in case we are not. So, hey, so how are you guys doing today? We're back here on Serenity Book Club, and we're excited to be together again as we continue this great book called Mirror Moments. Has been a real education, I think, for us as it relates to relationships and friendships in general. So I'm glad that you guys are here. I have Nita and I have Carolyn with me, and I think I have Veronica joining us in a second as well. So we're just glad to be here and glad to be together online. I do show that we are streaming on Facebook, which is a weird thing. So we'll see how this goes today. Hello, Veronica. We're glad to have you on today. How are you? I think you're muted. I think you're muted.
I am. Hello,
Yeah.
ladies. How are you?
Hi, how are you
I'm
doing?
well.
We're
How are
glad that
you?
you're here, and we're glad that you all are here together today, and we're glad for those who will be joining us on Facebook. So, with that in mind, I know that you were last on, Veronica, but would you lead us in a word of prayer?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Can we bow our heads? Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to come together again, dear Father. Thank you for allowing this time and this space. We come to you, dear Father, for learning, for trusting, and for believing in your word. I want to thank everyone that is here today, dear Father. I want you to watch over them, watch over their families. Continue to watch over us, dear Father. These are peril times, and we know that you are in control. We know that you are the head. We know that you sit high and you look low. And we thank you, dear Father. We thank you for the grace and mercy that you have provided us with us today. Dear Father, we thank you for the breath and the food and in our right minds in order to join this meeting and any other meeting that we might have moving forward. And in your precious name, we thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And those of you who are on Facebook, we're glad that you're there as well. We are in this book called Mirror Moments by Stephen Thurston. And we are so grateful for some of the things that we're learning today. Today, we're going to be starting in the chapter that begins on page 45, which is called Significant Suffocation. Significant suffocation, which I thought was a very interesting perspective for us to look at. And so, those of you who've had a chance to read it, I really want you to just jump in and so that you all can share and then share from your perspectives. It's always good for us to do. So, is as we've been reading through this book, we have learned that there's many challenges of relationships and how oftentimes we'll take things from one place into another that causes us to not have right relationships, not only with male, female, but also with our friendships. And so we're going to continue to explore this and this chapter called Significant Suffocation. I'm going to start here right there in the middle of the book. He says that he talks about healthy relationships, and he talks about the need for love and intimacy. But this struck me. He said, likewise, too much intimacy can lead to the death of your relationship. And into the next chapter, he goes on saying, too much togetherness can lead to intimacy overload, which it will suffocate your partner and destroy your relationship. Suffocation can smother and kill the love you've um, built or are trying to build and protect. And I'm just curious, what did you guys think of that as you were looking at that together?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think it's definitely true. I I'm I'm in the dating world first off, and I'm in a relationship now. I've been in a relationship for about a year, but just before the relationship, I dated a couple of individuals, and being a little older and a little more settled, that honeymoon stage, you want to cling and hang out and do everything. But then after a while, that wears off. And you just need your time, because before you enter in any relationship, you are sometimes doing things by yourself. So I've developed this whole relationship with me. And to bring someone into my space is good and fine. But do I want to hang out with them 24/7? Absolutely not. And even as a married woman, when I was married, I still did not want to hang out 24/7. I have my time to do my thing at the gym or hang out with my girlfriends. Although you crave for intimacy, everyone has a craving for intimacy. You do not want to overload it, because then it becomes like a Lifetime movie at that point. It's like, how do I get away from this quickly? And it wears a toll on you. You try not to have it wear a toll on you, but if you do, and you try to have that conversation and they're not in one accord and you're not in one accord, it's never going to work. You have to have, I call it my me time. You have to do things in your time. Like, I'm not a big sports person. So you hang out, he hangs out on Sunday and looks at his games after church or whatever, and I go do me, and it's fine. That's how it works out. We come together as one, but then we know when we are sick of each other, I go to my neutral corner and he goes to his neutral corner, and it works out fine.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there is a level in which we find ourselves suffocating. We can do that not only in relationships with males and females or husbands and wives, but also we can suffocate in friendships as well. There is a need for intimacy, and whether or not someone is in that relationship or not, there's a point in which people will feel a little over that overload kind of situation where it's just too much. It's too much to be around you. It's too much to have that. I mean, it's almost the reason why I think people started cruising at one point in life, or really enjoyed that, because it gives them a variety of things to do and a variety of people to see, rather than being with one person. So anyone else on that want to share as we move on through this particular chapter? Well, if not, we'll move on to the next page on 46. He goes on and says that there are 5 signs that you may be suffocating your partner: that they withdraw emotionally and physically. Friends tell you that you're suffocating him or her. You're not comfortable going to events, activities on your own. You never feel you can get close enough to your partner, or they can tell you, or they'll tell you that they feel suffocated in the relationship. What are your thoughts about that? Have you ever felt suffocated, or have you ever been a person who suffocates?
I'm not. I'm kind of a, it is crazy. My mother always says, she said, I don't, because I work in a public place. I work actually in a casino. So I'm around people all day and I know how to fake it till I make it. But I'm a geek at heart. I like my downtime. I like being alone and everything else. I have 3 best friends, and we actually communicate most of the time by text. I'm not a big phone talker. So I always find myself not suffocating. If anything, is people to crave my attention more, and I'm not able to give it, because that's just the person I am. And it's not to be facetious or to be mean spirited. It's just, that's not who I am. I crave my alone time. But I've seen where people in relationships, or people have said something to me, where they have this clingy friend, again, like a Lifetime movie, and they don't know what to do about it. It's called boundaries. They have to
Okay.
set some type of boundaries. And I tell them, set a boundary. If you guys want to hang together, have fun, go drinking, do whatever else, yes. But still, you have a child, that person have a child, and you have things to do. You have, just be honest about it. You have to be honest about it. And a lot of people are not. Then when you break up with them as a friend or as a partner, they be like, well, what happened? Because you
Right.
was too clingy. Go
Uh-huh.
find something to do. Leave me be.
That's a good part. That's a good part. What are your thoughts, guys? Anybody else either been suffocated or been the suffocating?
Let me
Those of
do,
you on Facebook, you guys can chime in too.
I just have to, Miss Veronica knows it. She got it down point. I agree with everything she says. I've never been the one to suffocate, but I have been suffocated. People want you constantly there and you have to do everything. I can't do everything with you because I have to love me for a moment and take some self care for myself.
Mhm.
And my self care will not be with the things that the two of us are doing. It's the things that I want to do for myself. The trip I want to go on by myself, the opera I might sit at, the play I may go to, or whatever. And we have different interests anyway. So yeah, I agree with Miss
Yeah.
Veronica.
Miss Carol is my BFF.
Mrs. Stella, you wanted to say something? You have on your mute button. Well, in the meantime, while she's trying to unmute, um, I think that what he's saying is that there is that intentionality that we see, that we have to understand that there is that emotional and physical suffocation that comes if we're not careful. And the carefulness that we have to look at is, how we're interacting with the people that we love or we claim that we love. And so are we being too, as some people would say, extra, or are we backing up so that we can give them room to breathe? All those things are really important in how we go about that. And then he talks about, making sure that we are taking the signs of our loved ones. Sometimes our friends and family members will say, you're suffocating them or you're being suffocated. And so, are we willing to listen to that good counsel, or are we so needy that we want to just continue to be so close to that person that we can't, stand it? And then, are we the type of people who are comfortable going on your own someplace? I have taken myself out to dinner before. I have taken myself before this pandemic to the movies before. I have had the opportunity to go to events by myself. And yeah, I mean, I think ideally you want to be able to go with someone, but really, is there a harm in going by yourself? And so that suffocation is something that can be real and true. Anybody else want to jump in there? So Mrs. Stella, you're still on mute. You can't get off of mute? Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's go on, and you can go on and put yours in the chat if you want to, Miss Stella, and we'll figure out what's going on there. Um, what Nita says is she says she likes her time and she loves, and she has she, and that you have to love yourself effectively, and in order for you to be able to love someone else. So yeah, I think that that's true. I think that we have ourselves in a situation where we really don't love ourselves all that much, and so it's very difficult for us to love someone else. I don't see any feedback from Facebook, but if you have feedback, feel free to put it in the chat. One of the other things that he talks about is that if you're guilty of suffocating, he says your significant other, here are some steps that to take recovery. And he says, take time for yourself and discover the things that make you happy. And I think that that was true to Veronica's point and also to Nita's point, that we have to take the time for ourselves and make sure that we alone are happy. To give your partner time and space and room to breathe, literally and metaphorically. It's important for us to do that. To balance our need with intimacy with our neighbor's need for space. That is really a key, is that we got to give other people space as well. And then the last thing he says is take time away. sometimes you have to come apart before you can, sometimes you have to come apart before you can come apart. I think be apart. I think that's my what he meant. But the key is that we don't want to come apart ourselves. We want to come apart from one another so that we can have that connection. Mrs. Stella, I see you're off mute. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I was gonna
Okay.
say I'm the opposite, and I think that's why I don't do well with relationships. I'm the clean type of person. I don't
Oh,
like my own company, and I don't like to do things by myself. I wish I had read this book. I wish he had wrote this book when I was younger, and maybe I could have spared myself so much of heartache.
well, I think that sometimes we find ourselves just because of how life throws us, that we might
Mhm.
find ourselves in a place where, I don't know, we feel the need to connect with someone in a deeper level, and not realizing that oftentimes that will just draw them further away from us. It winds up being just the opposite effect of what we had hoped that it would be. And I don't think that anyone, I mean, people are flattered that you want to be with them. I think I think we're flattered when someone wants to be with us as well. But I think that level of, it's just too much
Mhm.
is what gets it. When you realize that, okay, every time that I think about being with you, it's almost a sense of dread, then you know that it's too much.
Right.
It's just too much. And so we have to learn how to navigate the waters of these suffocating relationships. Like I said, it's not just even relationships in marital times, or even deeply relationships with men and women, but also sometimes our friendships. We will literally suffocate one another. And then we wonder why all of a sudden we don't hear from somebody for a while. What happened to you? Well, you. You're the one. And so we have to learn how to navigate that and learn how to be better in that process. I'm looking to Facebook to see if there's any comments to that, but I haven't seen anything as of yet. So what we want to do is we want to continue to look at this and to understand. He goes on and says that we have to learn how to cultivate our own friendships separate from your partner. So I think that that's a key, is that you got to have friends, and a relationship without people having other friends is a very suffocating, very unhealthy relationship. So if I'm only hanging out with you and I never hang out with my friends, or I hang out with this group of friends, but I never hang out with another group of friends, it becomes a very suffocating model. And it becomes a ability for you not to even connect in a real way with that person intimately, because you become like an anchor for them rather than a friend. What are your thoughts about that, when he says cultivate your friendship separate from your partner?
Well, I believe in it, and I always had my own friends, my own things I did things with or travel with or whatever. I I just believe that you need that. You need to know who you are, and I don't care how close you are or how good that relationship is. The two of you are still have some difference, and you need both to have the opportunity to enjoy that difference without hinging on the other person. So I just agree. You must have the friend.
Okay, that's good. Anita's saying, she's saying that a person can't be your only friend. You have to have your own life and interests. That is so true. You've got to be able to give people room to grow, and you have to have room to grow too. And if you never get a chance to grow and they never get a chance to grow, then you have just a completely suffocated relationship. So that's very good. Um, Anyone else on this point before we go to this next point and before we conclude this particular chapter? Okay, well, he goes on and says that know who you are as a person separate from your partner. If my relationships, even my friendships, are only coined because of the relationships I've had with other people, then it becomes an unhealthy relationship. Cynthia from Facebook says that she agrees with his point. When it's a relationship, I always maintain separate friendships. And that's clearly important. You have to have some friends with interest that because your spouse or your significant other or even your friends are not going to have all the same interests that you do. I think the danger that we worry about is, okay, am I taking too much away from that partner, from that friendship, from that spouse, in order for me to enhance who I am? Well, there's a balance. There's that squeaky balance where you have to take care. If those of you who are married have to take care of your spouse, right? Those of you who are in a committed relationship, you have to have time for that committed relationship. Those of you who have friendships, you have to have time to validate those friendships. However, if they're the only tribe that you deal with, you're going to wind up finding yourself so dependent upon those individuals that if something happens in your life, in your relationship, in your marriage, God forbid, death, who are you dealing with at that point? What other hankers do you have? And so those are the things that we have to be clear about and wonder how we are suffocating that partner, and understanding that you have to keep some relationships, friendships. And I'm not talking about male relationships if you're female, or female, those kinds of things. But you have to learn how to have that separate time. And he goes on by saying that when you mix autonomy and independence with interdependence and togetherness, you will notice that intimacy overload eases up as each partner feels free, yet at the same time feels loved. So you're not neglecting them by having that time apart if you're able to make that balance. But you will find yourself suffocated or suffocating if you don't give some space. So we've got to have healthy relationships along with that healthy relationship that we're dealing with. Any other input before we move to the next chapter, which I really want to get into, about securing insecurity?
And just from a personal point of view, I don't intertwine both. So if I have a friendship, my significant partner usually don't have an input on what's happening with my friendship. And with my friendship, I don't let them give me relationship issues. Because 9 times out of 10, a couple of my friends are single. So they trying to give me relationship advice. That'd be like a physician without an MD license. I
Yeah,
don't let it happen.
yeah.
No,
And it's wise
because
to,
they always got an opinion.
yeah, it's wise to have good counsel. In fact, Proverbs tells us that there's safety in a multitude of counselors. But what is a problem is, girl, if I were you, I wouldn't take that from them. That is the problem that we have. And so we have to find balance in all of that. So the next chapter that he talks about is called Securing Insecurity. And one of the things that I think that happens in life is that we find ourselves insecure about a lot of things, maybe how we look, maybe how we're feeling, maybe our intellect, maybe our jobs. There's a lot of things that can cause us insecurity, but he talks about that the lack of confidence is that state of feeling exposed, that you value, that you're valuable to threats and the anxiety and uncertainty that you feel about yourself. Sometimes we feel some insecurities. I mean, that's a part of life. It's a part of our reality. We have to work through some things. Sometimes we have to work harder through some insecurities than others. I thank God for people who are insecure sometimes, because insecurities tell us that we still have a dependency upon someone else like God, as opposed to ourselves. What my fear always is the person who is narcissistic, who, you know, who basically have no fear of anything, and they think that they know everything about everything and they're perfectly fine. But what he was talking about here is that unchecked insecurity is dangerous. So I think that we all have some level of insecurity, and that's okay as long as we're continuing to work through it. But unchecked insecurity is the thing that will damage a relationship. And he goes on by saying that it will cause you to push away the person that God has sent to you. So sometimes in your insecurity, God is sending that person, but you, whatever it is that's within us, it may be that friend that God is sending, it may be that husband, that wife, whatever it is, God is sending that person, but you're pushing them away because of whatever insecurities that you had. It may have been a bad relationship in the past. It may have been how you thought about yourself growing up. It could have been all kinds of other things that contribute to that. I'm not pretty enough. Oh, how could they like me? How, you know, I'm not smart enough. How could they hang out with me? You know, I'm not whatever. Whatever those things are can be a way of actually pushing away that individual. What are your all thoughts about that? You think that this is true? And those of you on Facebook, you guys can chime in too.
I think it's true.
I do too.
Yeah, we tend to push people away because of whatever. Like you said, we just don't feel like we're worthy of them, or even if they're not worthy of us, either way, we just push them away. But it's our insecurity of whatever we have going on, our issues. So I agree.
Yeah, sometimes we have to work on that, right? Guys, you all think so?
Definitely.
He goes on and says that cause you manufacture flaws within your partner that don't exist. If you find someone that, and you're scared of a relationship, or you're scared of a friendship, or you're scared of entering into something new, all of a sudden you might manufacture flaws that really don't exist. Like, oh, this person is this, or this person is that. And you're like, well, I've never seen that in that individual. Well, yeah, I just think it's there. And I think it's part of our defense mechanism that keeps people shooed away from us. What are your thoughts on that, guys? Okay, well,
I find it true. I find it true because it can either be an insecurity or it can be a fear. It's really nowhere distinguishing between either one. And you will find that as a factor in order to get rid of that person. Whether they did something or not, it can be something that you manufactured and they actually don't have at all, or something that you saw in another partner that you're bringing into that one, thinking that it's going to happen. And it can just be you. And it's a fear factor
absolutely.
because insecurity is nothing but fear.
Yes, absolutely. We totally agree. Nita also says that you can manufacture flaws in yourself as well on the other person. Yes, absolutely. So you're projecting almost what is going on with you onto that person, making them someone that you do not want to deal with. He goes on by saying also that the reason why this is dangerous, that this insecurity is dangerous, is because it will cause you to prematurely abort the relationship as your mind pollutes and perverts your thoughts, leading you to believe the lies you tell yourself. And I think that that spoke to what Nita was saying about that, that sometimes we speak about ourselves or the lies that we tell ourselves, and then we wind up aborting that relationship or that friendship or that marriage because we feel like this is really true, but these are things that are happening in us. And so we have to be careful of those insecurities and ask ourselves, is this them? Is this me? Is this real? Is this manufactured? Is this something that I have to be conscious about for myself? Or is this something that I'm really feeling because this is something that is true? And so we've got to go through and evaluate that sometimes. Any thoughts before we move to this next section that he talks about these insecurities that we're dealing with?
Right after my divorce, my marriage ended due to infidelity. So when I started dating again, I used to always have a saying. I don't use it as much now, but I still use it sometimes. I used to always have a saying: "Do unto them before they do it." What it was, do unto them before they do it to you. And that was a creed that I actually live by. So if I even seen an inkling of anything, it could be a phone call in the middle of the night. It can be cutting off the phone while we on a date. It could be anything. I was up. Deuces.
Yeah, yeah,
Block number, can't contact me, none of that. And
yeah.
that was because of an insecurity, because that's how my marriage ended. But then I had to go back and reevaluate some things because one instance I left, he was working, I was working hours. So they, like, my staff called me in the middle of the night because I'm in management. So when his staff did that and they was his staff number, I was like, nope, wrong. It was a woman, time to go. And that's how most of your insecurities play out, because it's something that's going on in your own mind or things that happened in your past.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of that contributes to it. I think that you're right. I think that that is so right. He goes on by saying that make it easier for you to end things, walking away before your partner, that, like you said, Veronica, in order to avoid the risk of pain that you can surface feeling abandoned. And so sometimes we walk away from those relationships or even those friendships because we think that they're going to, as you said, do you, that you want to do unto them before they do unto you. And so that winds up keeping you from valuable friendships that you could have built or relationships that you could have done, or even aborting a marriage that really is pretty solid, but because of what's happening in your own mind and heart, causing you that discomfort. Anything from Facebook or also from our guest here to talk about before we move on to this next section? Well, let's move on. It goes on, he goes on and says that there are 5 of the most common signs of insecurity existing within a relationship. And again, this speaks to you all in marriage, those of you who are in relationship and those who are in friendship. And he says, one, first of all, extreme clinginess or neediness. That is a sign of insecurity. If you feel like you can't be out of their sight, or they can't be out of your sight, or you can't function and do anything besides them or without them, especially you find that in lots of groups of friends. We can't do something, or I better not do this. All that can be a sign of insecurity. And so we have to be careful of that, of that extreme clinginess. And you know what that feels like. If you've ever had somebody clinging to you or needy for you, it's almost like it's an irritant. It's like a mosquito bite that continues to just bite and bite and bite. There's a lot of things that come with that because they're so needy. He goes on and says the fear of rejection or abandonment also. So you suggest, hey, to your girlfriends, hey, want to hang out tonight? Well, yeah, I can't do it tonight. And then all of a sudden you're feeling all some kind of way about it because people are working or they've got something else that they got to do, and like, well, maybe they don't love me, maybe they don't care about me. It's that rejection or that abandonment, and that can happen in all those relationships. And we have to be careful of our own insecurity, because then it will cause us not to have good relationships, good strong relationships. What are your thoughts on that before we move on?
I can agree with you. I had a bad habit, even with relationships and friendships. People calling you back. I might call you and you don't respond, and I keep calling, calling. All within maybe 2 hours apart. And now I realize that that's worrisome. All you need to do is call a person one time, and and give them the chance to call you back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good observation. Very good observation. He goes on and says that the lack of trust will show that insecurity along with irrational jealousy. There's the lack of trust and irrational jealousy, where someone is always scoping and like, well, who is that? And who are them? And who is on the phone? And all of those things, because there's that irrational jealousy. I saw the way that they looked at you, or I saw the way that you looked at them, or whatever it is that can cause all of that lack of trust and lack of, or the irrational jealousy. And oftentimes that comes from the pain of another relationship that comes from before, that you brought now into this friendship. Somehow, she likes her better, and so she's not hanging out with me, or she doesn't call me back as much. Or in a relationship, well, well, who is so and so? And so that's my childhood friend, or that's my cousin, or what have you. And no, I just saw the way that they're looking at you. So what are your thoughts on irrational jealousy and lack of trust? Is that one of the keys that you all see in this insecurity?
It definitely is. Both of them. They equal. I don't I speak from, how do I say it? I don't always speak from knowledge on this, only because I know crazy when I see crazy. And the first sign of who you on the phone with or who was that, I'm usually done. I just like when you raise a child, a child just crying, cling on to you, cling. I be like, get that little kid up out of here. We was not raised like that. I'm sorry. Don't look at me, Miss Carolyn. God forgive me. But we just wasn't raised like that. We were raised for independency and know who you are. And my father always said, have all of your own, because if something happened or if they start that, you always got a place to retreat back to. And like spoiled kids, or who is that on the phone? Don't worry about who I'm talking to. It quick. God gonna watch my mouth. He is. Quickness. It's a wrap. It don't take me long. I could be talking just like this, like I'm talking to you all, and somebody come in the room tomorrow. Who you talking to? None of your business. But oh yes, ladies, yes. It's just I just don't tolerate it. It was crazy, because let me tell you, in management, I had a coworker that I would come in the door and she'd be like, where you been? I hate that. That would get me 90 to 100. Don't ask me where I've been. Don't ask me where I'm going. I'm 55 years old. You don't need to know where I go, where I've been, none of that. None of it.
That's a whole nother subject.
It is. She was like, where you been? I was like, Don't ask me where I've been. I hate that question. Don't ask me where I'm going. Don't ask me where I've been. It's just it, but that comes from that comes from that comes from the same thing, basically. Don't what? What you mean? Don't ask me where I've been. And it was, that's how I replied, and it went far left. I apologize for it, but my mother and father stopped asking me where I've been, where I was going when I was 18 and moved out. I just don't like it when adult people. Where you going? Where you been? Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's another subject entirely, Veronica. But no, I understand what you're saying. What he talks about is that these obsessive thoughts, irrational jealousy,
Yeah.
of trust can cause you to have to reevaluate and say, God, why am I so insecure about this? Why is this happening? Why am I thinking this way? And asking God to even cover our thoughts and
right.
God, I submit this thing to you. This thing is beyond me. This thing is from my past, maybe how I was raised, maybe how I deal with people, maybe disappointment, maybe abandonment in relationships. All of those things can filter in. And so we've got to be able to ask God how to handle these things so that we can interact properly with them. He goes on and talks about the negate of the negatives. And I'm not going to go into the middle of his paragraph. I'm going to but he goes on by saying insecure people constantly focus on what's not working in the relationship rather than appreciating and acknowledging what is. And I think that that's also the time in which you're insecure, is that the focus is not on the good times. Even in marriages, oftentimes people have this view that everything was bad. Clearly in my marriage, there was not bad things. I had great years that I can absolutely say there was great years. And you can't focus on the bad things and just say that everything was bad, because it clearly wasn't. However, there were some bad things, and that's why, sometimes you lead to the end of relationships. Also in friendships and what have you, you've got to know when it's the time to leave, but to leave right. But one of the things is that the focus on the negative is a part of our insecurity, is that everything is negative. I'm trying to dissect everything that's bad, and I cannot take the time to appreciate what's good. Cynthia from Facebook says that the first sign of any possessive action, she says she leaves and distances herself greatly. Yeah.
Now, to go back, this book, the title don't really match the book. I read the book and it's awesome. It tells you about the insecurities. It tells you about how to negate, how to go from insecure to secure. It's a very good book. I don't know why the title was whatever. It didn't go with it. I thought it was something else too. But it just gives you life lessons on life relationships and how to handle them.
Yeah, I think the reason why he might have chosen, and that's something that I could always ask him, but one of the things I think that is the mirror moments. When you look in the mirror, oftentimes you're always looking at, you're beginning to look at yourself. And so how you think, how you act, how you look, all of those things. And so mirrors also are reflective. And so I think that that's what he means by these mirror moments, that they're reflective moments, what you need to be thinking about, not only what you see, and not only what you see in yourself, but what you can reflect upon. And so, I mean, I'm not going to speak for him, but I think in his forward, he kind of talks about that, or his introduction. So I think that that's why he chose that. But, books are books, titles are titles, but the information, as you said, Veronica, is very good. The last part is, he says, ask and not ask, don't assume. I thought that this was key in relationships, whether or not these are friendships, guys, or whether or not it's marriage, or whether or not it's a relationship. It says that if someone says, one thing, don't assume they mean something else. There's oftentimes in our own insecurity that we think that someone means something completely different than what they said. Why not ask? Do we have an issue with asking people what they meant? Or is it that it's just much easier for us to believe um, our own perspective?
It is, but as women, men, or anyone, that definitely is something that we need to come out of and learn how to ask. Because an assumption, they would assume one thing and it's definitely something else. I've come to realization, I don't ask about everything, but some things I'm not clear about, or if someone had told me something else, I would rather ask that person to give a clarification.
Yeah, I think that I think that's a good perspective. It says that if your partner is silent, don't assume that the silence can be a hidden or negative connotation. And sometimes I think that when someone doesn't respond to it or they're silent about it, instead of us assuming, instead of us thinking, well, maybe they need time to think about it, to process it, to clarify, we jump to some conclusions ourselves, and that's an unhealthy place for us to be. Also, he goes on and says, and finally, stop constantly asking, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? You don't have to know every single thought in their head. Oftentimes, people who like to communicate, and then people who are more quiet than you might be, well, what are you thinking? What's on your mind? I know that we do that on a regular with individuals. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking at this moment? Sometimes it's not anything. Sometimes they're not thinking anything.
And if you get a smart one like mine, I was like, what are you thinking about? What's on your mind? What? He's like, I'm thinking of looking at this game. If you quit talking in the middle of it, I'm like, I'm going home.
Oh, goodness gracious. From Facebook, Renita Barnes says, I always mirror back what someone says to me in my own words, and then I make sure I understand what they said. Yeah, it's good for you to do just
Very
that,
good.
as opposed to trying to assume someone is in a different place or space than you are. So yes, amen. Totally agree with that. He goes on by talking about pause on producing problems, and then he finishes up by putting perfection out to pasture. And he talks about, sometimes we have to just stop manufacturing issues in relationships, whether or not that's your friends. One of the things that you said, Mr. Stella, about calling a friend and they don't call you back, and then you call several times, like, okay, it's got to be an issue. Well, maybe they're not home, maybe they're shopping. You don't know what's happening. And sometimes we produce trauma and drama that we should never produce in the first place. Sometimes you're just not available, and that's okay. Sometimes you're not going to just continue to produce trauma and drama in a relationship. It just will tear you down and cause your own insecurities to be even advanced, in a sense, because now you're thinking all kinds of things. Well, maybe they're together doing something else without me, or maybe they have found someone else, or maybe they're having an affair. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can come along with that. What are your thoughts, guys?
You know that saying, the devil's mind is what is it? The devil's mind is idle mind is the devil's mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Satan's work.
The idle mind and the devil workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I see I'm doing that, I go find me something to do, because that's all it is. I'm bored.
Right.
And I can come up with some stuff like a whole movie. Girl, go and get you a book, find something to do.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I
Right.
think also our need for perfection. I mean, there is a need in that's why I think Hallmark movies, and I'm a fan, don't get me wrong, don't think I'm a chump, but I'm a fan of Hallmark movies because they're
Me too.
predictable. They're always going to end well. They're going to end well. But one of the things about it is that oftentimes we take life as a Hallmark movie. And then when it's not perfect in the way that we saw it in the movie, then somehow we feel like something's wrong. And not realizing there's some things that we have to accept, and there's some things that we don't need to accept. And the things that we don't need to accept is something real, but also the things that we perfect in our minds, that's not fair to your friendships. That's not fair to your relationships. That's not fair to your spouses, is to have this unwritten expectation that this person is going to be a certain way. Do you all find that perfection gets in your way?
Okay, let's be honest.
Okay.
I do.
All right.
I'm more of the perfectionist. So it does. It hinders a lot of times. But then I have to stop and think that I try my best to accept everybody for who they are. And I can't hinge my thoughts and beliefs on them. So if I need you to line this up this way, and it's not, there's no need for me to get upset. I'll just wait till you leave out the room, and I'll just redo it. So you have to find a boundary with it, but you
Yeah.
have to realize people are different. But I am, and I had to work on that. So that mirror moment really had to work on that.
Well, there's a balance that has to happen in all of our lives in order for us to have good relationships. Vivian from Facebook says that any relationship that you have to answer to be accountable for, every move is like being in prison. Oh man, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Almost similar to what you say, Veronica, but not to that extent. If you feel like you have to make account for everything, whether or not
Uh-huh.
friendships or spouses, or I mean, because there's a different accountability that spouses have to one another because they have a commitment, a covenant. But even then, to be able to have respect enough to one another to let you be individuals and to
Right.
trust each other in this relationship. You would hope that after years with a person that you've proven loyalty and you've proven
Uh-huh.
what you needed. But you know insecurity is a really hard thing, and so we have to learn to guard our hearts,
Yes.
our minds. One
Mines.
way that we can do it is through the word of God, through our prayer time,
Yes.
and then to talking to one another. How about
Uh-huh.
that? How about communication? That's a good key for us. So those are the two chapters that we were going to cover today. We're grateful for the opportunity. Renita says, I am learning to love people with their flaws and all,
That's
except
it.
except when they are causing harm to themselves or others. I remind myself that I'm not perfect, and to accept people. That's good. I think that we have to be willing to realize who we are, deal with our own insecurities,
Uh-huh.
respect other people with their insecurities, and realize that everybody has their own stuff, and then figuring out what's the extent of how far you're going to go, or in your commitment. It depends upon, with that marriage, I've got to work harder. In that committed relationship, I have to work harder. In that friendship, I have to work harder because I've made commitments to these individuals, but making a commitment without it being unhealthy. So that's it for today for our mirror moments. I'm glad that you guys got a chance to join us for Serenity Book Club. We will continue in this book. We are almost done. Next week, we're going to talk about Groundhog Day dating and unsafe people. So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll just have 2 more chapters to go, and then we're going to be done with this. But I hope that you all have enjoyed this book. I know that I have, and I've enjoyed our discussions. And I hope that you all will join us next week with Serenity Book Club. You all have a wonderful day. God bless you.